Welcome to the Stand on Your Investment podcast, presented by UC Hunting Properties and Expedition Land Management, where professionals from around the country will dive deep into land management strategies, investing in recreational real estate, and all things hunting.
All right, folks, we're back. This is the Stand on Your Investment podcast. One of UCHP's finest, Tondo Waldron, from the great state of Kansas. And Tondo's living proof on a lot of the stuff we talk about, week in and week out on the podcast. So we invited Tondo to just speak about some of his successes, some of his strategies. Tondo, so normally what we do is during the podcast, we'll actually pick a property. And a lot of times it's random. An at-large listing or maybe a property one of us work on or whatever, and collectively we just go through on the strategy on why we're doing what we're doing, where we're doing it, that sort of thing. So this week's neat, in my opinion, because you've had so many successes in Kansas, in your dirt, basically flipping farms and developing farms and making your clients a lot of money doing it. So with no further delay, Tondo Waldron, you want to give us a little background on yourself?
Yeah. So it's funny. I'm a huge transplant. So I grew up in New York. My dad was a soldier. He was stationed in Fort Riley, Kansas, which is right by Kansas State University. So I followed my dad and went to Kansas State University, and never hunted till my roommates in college, who were all Kansans, said, "Hey, do you want to shoot pheasants with us? Would you like to try to shoot a bow?" And I was like, "I don't think I can shoot a bow." And went out at halftime of a football game. We were all in a group watching, and my buddy was sighting in his bow, and he let me take a shot. And literally, the game didn't finish, and I was at a bow shop. I was buying a bow. So I got the bug big time. And I worked for K-State at the athletic department, and then moved to Kansas City, where my wife was from, and worked in marketing. I started at a radio station and then started my own company. Had that for 16 years, did really well with that. So I had some good cash flow. So I said, I think I'd like to buy some property that I can hunt on. So I bought a farm. And in the process of buying a farm, I just wasn't pleased with the guys that were trying to show me the farms and tell me about, because I didn't really understand what I was looking for. I remember them pointing at tracks saying, "Look at these deer tracks." And yeah, I'm from New York, but dude, that's a cow. That's not a deer track. So yeah, it was just frustrating. So I just said, "Hey, I think I'm going to buy more land eventually. I'll get a real estate license." So I got a real estate license, and then got into the business. So I made the plunge 12 years ago, sold my marketing company, and got into real estate. And the main reason I got into real estate initially, it was selfish. It was just for myself. It's like I wanted the phone to ring so that I would be the first to know that the property was for sale, so I could go out and look at it and see if it was something I wanted. But it just blossomed into, there's so many people that are like me that understand land, that, it's become a blessing to help all these other people find, exactly what they're looking for. And I think I have the tools to help them find it. And another blessing happens. I meet the guys. I have a client call that tells me they're looking for land. And as we're driving out looking at one of the first properties, they explain why they're looking for land. And they said, "Well, we make, boom arms for cranes, and we make scarifiers for the back of dozers, but we would really like to get into making equipment to transform land." And it was the Vail X guys. So they were my client before they got into the Vail X business. They were just dabbling in it. They had the factories and the equipment, and they were just trying to take the equipment that others had done and make it better and stronger and, withstand and to do these kind of projects. So they were developing these projects, but they needed a piece of property to test it on and to transform. So I went with the owner of the company, and I was telling them how I was using the tools that I was using to transform properties, and he just laughed and he said, "I'll tell you what." And I had already owned my first farm for 5 years, and he said, "I'll tell you what, I'm going to bring a semi with all of our equipment with a track loader, and I'll leave it at your farm for 1 week. And you just try it out and test it and just see what you think." And literally in that 1 week, I did more projects. You know how we all sit in a tree stand and we say, "Man, I really wish I could have a water hole over here." Or, "Man, if I could just create an area where the deer could cross this creek." Or, "Man, if I could get access to come in from this backside." You know how we all sit in the stand and in our mind, we're making the perfect farm, but then we think, "Oh my God, I'm going to break my back and get poison ivy and ticks, and I'm never going to get it done." And then the next year goes by and you're still hunting in that same stand because you just didn't have the time and the energy to make it perfect. Because in our heads, sitting in that stand, we know how to make it perfect. We just don't have the time in the day. We don't have the money to pay the copay, to pay the doctor for all the injuries we incur when trying to do all that kind of work. So he left it at my farm, and literally I did more in that week. And, that wasn't just a 24-hour days, but let's just say I did more in 30 hours than I did the previous 5 years. And I did all the projects. I did everything, because I was like, I got to do this while I have this equipment. And oh my God, it was so amazing to just go to the stand or create new stand sites. And it was all set up. Like it was a game changer for me. It was like God put the Veil X guys in my path. And it's changed everything for me. So I don't look at
Tondo, that is a super, super, super cool story, and what a testament to what Veil's turned into as well. I'd be pretty remiss to tell you that if they're looking to do any corporate sponsorship work with, say, a group of individuals in the real estate space that specialize in exactly what they do, we would love to visit with them. Maybe we can meet them down at your farm.
Absolutely. You can meet them at their farm that I sold to them. That is the pinnacle. I mean, they've done it all. And what's awesome about it is if I have an opinion about something, sometimes I'm crazy, but a lot of times they say, "What do you think?" And I'll say, "Well, you need to reroute the hose on the left side because it can get kinked and pinched." And they'll turn around and build a guard to go around the hose. It's like they listen, and man, we really need something that will mulch the trees. What do we have? They got a drum mulcher now, and then they have the rotary mulcher, and it's what a great partnership. But literally, as we progress talking today, and you see the kind of flips that I've done and the success that I've had, it's all because of that equipment. I've done some commercials for them, and Lee Lukoski was in one, and he makes the statement of, "This equipment has paid for itself multiple times, with the time and what it's saved." I'll say that all day. Like,
hell, I thought we were filming a Veil X commercial right now. Am I wrong?
No. Yeah. But what's amazing about it, and I can understand it, and I can see why you guys are doing what you do, because not every landowner is going to go spend $80,000 on a loader and then another $100,000 on all the attachments, just to take care of 160 acres. That's why you guys are here. And it makes so much sense. That's a service that I offer to my clients that no one else is doing it. Others have tried, and it's funny, others have tried, but they haven't used Veil X equipment. and they're not doing it anymore. They're out of it. It's like, I still have the same brush cutter that I started with, and I probably had it 8 years now. And, other than sharpening the blades, that thing is a beast. Like,
yeah, super well made. I mean, both Chris and I think Trav even has a piece of Vail equipment up there in Wisconsin, but we're very familiar. I mean, I don't even know what the technical term of the brush cutter we have is, but I mean, you want to talk about a piece of equipment that literally eats cedar trees. I don't know how else to describe it. So
yeah, you have a mulcher. Yeah.
Vail's insane.
We have the drum mulcher, and it eats trees in a hurry, in one way, out the other in about 1 second.
Yep. Yeah.
Pretty impressive. Well, Tondo, let's shift gears, and I know you sent us quite a few things to look at. I mean, the map that's up on the screen. I mean, do you want to talk to us about this project / farm, and just give us kind of a brief background and a breakdown of this property and the story behind it? I mean, obviously we've heard bits and pieces of it, and I think it's incredible. So this, to me, truly is the epitome of, taking a farm and call it what you want, right? Whether it was a cattle farm or whatever somebody would have coined this as, and what you turned it into truly made it a hunting property and greatly enhanced the value. So, I mean, if you want to, kind of take the mic and walk us through this, I think the listeners would be anxious to hear and understand what you did here.
Right. So this is a unique property because they don't have this everywhere, but they have properties that are similar to this. But this specific property was in a program, and it's funny. When we started, I told you 20 years, but as we are all getting older, this could have been 40 years ago when it was enrolled in this program. And it was a CRP tree program. So the government told you that to plant trees, and they would pay you a per acre price per year. And it was a 20-year contract. And then they renewed it for 10 more years. And what ends up, though, is it's literally a jungle. This is just solid trees. Am I doing this? Are you guys looking at my screen? Yes.
Yep.
Okay. So this is just solid trees, and and it doesn't go for a lot of money the way that it sits. So this property, I believe I bought it for $1,300 an acre. And there's really no use for it. There's not much you can do with it. But I looked at it and saw the access I could gain. I can overlay soil maps on it and see the tillable quality of the soil, so I know stuff will grow there. I knew that the access points you should get. I saw that this is Drywood Creek that runs through the property, so it had all the attributes. It's surrounded by really big farms with cropland, so we know which way the deer are traveling to eat. So I went into this farm with the Vail X equipment in mind, and I'll just show you, and transformed it. So me and the Vail X piece of equipment, I went in and said, oh, here's a good place for a food plot. So my screen's not moving now. There it goes. So at the time, this was the only access, was this road dead ended on the property. So I blew a trail through it and opened it up, put a Connex in where I could keep the equipment and fuel and seed and some tools, and built a food plot. And then went off because I knew that there's a creek that runs through here. So I built another food plot. And literally this is probably 2 days. I've already got 2 food plots set up. And when I do a food plot, I don't just cut the trees down. I may leave some trees strategically, but I pull them out by the roots. I get them out. So you're never going to run into them again, when the new owner may only have a 4-wheeler. So I set it up so the new owner can maintain these food plots with an ATV if he wants to. But and my other philosophy is, I want to know where the deer are coming and going, how they're getting into the food plot and how they're coming out. So with the same equipment, I blow trails through here. We call it the path of least resistance. So if you create that path of least resistance and you stay off of it, the deer will follow that trail. And so you can see I skirted all the way around, and it's crazy that from the main gate to the furthest food plot was 2.2 miles. So on 530 acres, to get from there, following this trail all the way around to this food plot was 2.2 miles. But along the way, so let's say I was setting it up for a group of guys who live in Texas, and these 6 guys are going to come hunt. They all want somewhere to go to hunt. So my goal was to make it so that nobody felt like they got the bad draw. So I made a food plot here, and then I made a food plot here, and this is a water source, and then there's a huge cedar bedding area back in here. So I knew that this is where the deer were going to come and go to get back into here. So it's like I just like what you guys do. I walked the property, and I spent a good amount of time learning the property and understanding where the best places were. And then I hired a dozer to do this, to clear these fields, because these are actual, because there's a portion of the population that when they buy a property, you always hear it, well, is there any return? Will it pay the taxes? They want some kind of cash flow on the property. And it's funny, many of the times it's because that's what their wives require for them to buy the property. They got to be getting a check in the mail. So I opened up this crop field, but it's also very strategic, because this drywood creek, the banks of the creek, of the drywood creek, are 20 feet walls that the deer, unless you're shooting at them and they're running for their life, they're not going to cross anywhere on here unless you designate it. So what do? I brought an excavator and I cleaned out crossings. So I made it an easy path down and an easy path up, and then strategically, put a tree stand. So with a northwest wind, you're shooting the deer that are crossing that creek. So, I don't know what more to say other than I did all this work. I was probably done with it, planted. It looked beautiful. So I put it up for sale. I sold it to the first guy that looked at it. And I got $27.50 an acre. So the net on that, after expenses, was about $650,000. And that was 5 months.
It's an incredible story, Tondo. In looking at this map, I'm curious. I get you walked it and you understand, hunting better than the average guy. But the one question I was going to ask you is, you have obviously a series of food plots throughout this farm, and you created some big ag fields, down in the bottom, I guess, or the southeast corner of the property. What I'm curious about is food plot, the actual selection of what you put on them. Were you mixing it up? Were you trying to keep it standard? And the reason I'm curious about this is on this size of a tract. This isn't a huge farm. To me, this would allow you to have, multiple mature deer, because they could each kind of pick an area and then hone in and call it, own it, or whatever.
Right.
I'm just curious on what you've seen as this progressed, on if you had, a different food source somewhere than the other, if like you'd get deer on one plot, but not on another. I think you see where I'm going with this question. I'm just curious in how, once you transformed it, how it changed how the deer use it, and what you started to see.
So the blessing of it was I only had it 5 months, right? So there wasn't a whole lot of time, but I was getting pictures of great deer, but I wasn't, the bucks that I were getting, on the west side, I wouldn't, just like you said, I wouldn't see those deer on the east side. So they had their own home range territories. But I was, we were putting in oats and brassicas and clover. Anywhere that I made the path of least resistance, I always line it with clover, just so it gets them to meander on those trails. And you can't really see it in this map, but a lot of this is interconnected, and there's like a trail system to get through to get into the different food plot areas. It's like you can't really see it. I can't see it, but it's in there. There's trails that connect all of this. But something that rang in my ear, wherever I put blinds. So like I put a redneck blind right here. So wherever I put a redneck blind, I always do like a 40-yard arc, and I always plant turnips. So that's my golden ticket. So I'll do something that I can shoot within 40 yards. Then I watch the cameras. If there's a big buck that I want to shoot, I wait till we have the hard freeze, and then I hunt that redneck blind hard for, as long as it takes to shoot that buck. But I usually will just stay away from it until the wind's right, and then hunt the turnips in that 40-yard arc. So everywhere that I have a redneck blind, I would put a 40-yard arc, that would essentially be the home run shot for the buck. This one, there's the redneck here. So I would I put corn in because I had extra seed from my farm just left over. So, but the blessing was I didn't even get to hunt it. I never got to hunt this farm. I sold it.
And I apologize, Tondo, after I asked that. I in my mind, this is a 4, 5, 6 year project, not 5 months. So I guess unless they're sharing that kind of intel with you, maybe you don't know. But
no, it happened so fast. Like, look at this. This is corn here that just created a wall because we needed to be able to get down this edge to get to the stand that was here.
Sure.
So as strategic as we could get it.
So Tondo, are you always trying to put something? I mean, Curt and I do this as well. That's why it kind of rang a bell with me. But are you almost always trying to put something different in front of your stand location when you're doing food plots? Because typically we'll either do a plot that's small enough pretty much to shoot the whole thing. You might not be able to take an 80-yard shot or something like that, but that's a smaller food plot, more of a kill plot. But like on your bigger destination food plots, are you usually putting something different in front of it? I mean, you said brassicas, but is that always it for you, or do you pick different things to put in front of you?
Different things. Yeah. It depends. So cowpeas or winter peas, it just depends on, am I going to hunt turkeys there in the spring? And literally it's like, it's a blessing that we can shoot one deer in Kansas. But I'm making these plots to hold the deer when the season ends, just so they don't go to the neighbors, so they won't go anywhere else. So I'll make them larger plots, but then I'll try to make something desirable for the right when the first freeze is happening, when the rut's happening. That's really the target. It's like everything else out there is just to hold them for the rest of the non-hunting season. So a lot of soybeans, it's funny. It's like, and you guys are probably the same. Like when you're there, you'll know, what to do.
Well, and it's interesting you say that, because I think both Chris and I and Travis would like to think that, when just from experience. But the one question I was going to ask you on this too, Tondo, and this is maybe more in general. Kansas, obviously, you guys can do supplemental feeding. You can run feeders, so on and so forth. And the one thing we've noticed, from Iowa to Kansas is it does seem like the deer in Kansas are substantially more feeder friendly, because they've probably been seeing them since they were, little fawns or whatever. And in Iowa, it was almost a training process. And Chris, chime in on this. I guess I bring this up because I look at this map and I see a very well laid out plan with food plots and a strategy behind the food plots and why you're doing what you're doing, where you're doing it. I'm just curious, Tondo, if are they still using feeders, supplementally? Are they not using feeders in this property? Just curious.
I don't know. Yeah. So it's it's a group that bought it, and I, at closing, was, I've talked to them a couple times since just to ask what kind of deer they've got, and they've sent me pictures, but I don't think they're using feeders.
Wow.
I don't think so.
That's just such a rarity in Kansas. I mean, and Curt alluded to it a little bit. We did supplemental feeding in Iowa, which only ends up being about a 5-month season. If you got to make sure 6-month season if you're not hunting over them and things like that. The one thing I noticed when we first started the program, like a Kansas deer, like it's ingrained in them, they see the feeder, they walk right to it. They don't have to smell it. They don't have to do nothing. You just put one and they're like, oh, that's a feeder. I'm going to go walk to it. In Iowa, however, it took a while for them to like walk up to it and actually eat out of it. They were not comfortable doing it. It probably took a good year to do it, in a lot of coaxing, as far as making sure that there was food on the ground there, that it was in a food plot that they liked anyway, that they were going to be around it. But then it took a while for them to get their nose comfortable sticking in it. And I always hear that, feeders can cause a lot of stress too. So there was the yin and the yang as far as whether we need to do it or not. But that's always it's the biggest difference, I think, between Kansas and Iowa, is a lot of farms don't put food plots on, but that stress thing to me is pretty big. Like, you have good sized food plots, they don't have to come to that one area and eat. Right. I mean, you can have food plot on it too. Don't get me wrong, but holding deer wise, to your point, all year long, you can do it much easier with a food plot over a feeder. Right. At least in my opinion. Are you of that same opinion?
Yeah, I am. And that's why so when I'll have farms with small kill plots, and then we put feeders on them. But I'm the same, like I feel the same way. It's like, I don't really ever see the bigger bucks that I shoot at a feeder. Like, although there are some farms where I get big bucks, but they're not so much. I'm not getting pictures of them at the feeder, but they're in the area where all the deer are at the feeder. So in the rut, when the does are just religiously at the feeder, the bucks are, coming through looking for the does, but they're not coming to eat at the feeder. But I mean, I have pictures. Are we still looking at my screen? This is my success. Are you looking? Can you see that?
Yep. Trophy room.
Yeah. So that's the man cave, but let me just find this feeder. The world gets to see my computer. Oh, so there's that feeder, and they're coming to that.
Mm-hmm. And even your feeder's a very open, an open feeder, as far as they can see through it. It's a trough. It's not tubes where they can't see and things like that.
Yeah. So I don't really use the ones where they stick their snout in and eat out of it. I mean, a lot of people do. They work, but this drops corn about a 5-gallon bucket every morning at 7:30. It holds 4,000 pounds. So, and this is where there's not a lot of crops. This farm I have borders 5,600 acres of owned by the energy company in Kansas. So I'm pulling the deer. I have 52 acres of soybeans on this farm, and I really have the only food that these deer have access to. No one else has anything planted bordering this 5,600 acres. But if I want to, and they, like the farmer, I pay him to plant the beans, and he really gets nothing at harvest because it's just so hammered by the deer. So when the beans are gone, I do this all the time, but I step it up just to keep the deer from leaving and going somewhere else, and I mean, this picture, this is another one you're going to think is crazy. This picture is 6 days after I put that feeder out.
So it didn't take long.
Didn't take them long. No, didn't.
I'm just chuckling because that feeder in general is the equivalent of like a calf stuffer that we'd use to feed out cattle here in Iowa. Same exact concept, and I'm just chuckling because I'm used to looking at cattle sticking their head in that, not deer. So that this makes me chuckle a little.
And so the Vail guys, they're into this. They're listening, and they had partnered with Lee and Tiffany, and Lee was telling him how much corn, he was having to put out. And man, if we could only come up with something. So they put their heads together and designed this feeder. So this feeder was designed by Lee and Ed Hammersmith. And I mean, I've got 4 of them now on 4 different farms, and this is what I swear by.
So when you're when you're looking at a farm, and because of what you do for your clients, your model is, I don't want to say it's unique to a real estate agent. You talked about it, and you've alluded to it a couple different times, but that's how you service your customer. So talk a little bit about how your customer base is loyal. I mean, you have a heck of a loyal following of buyers and even sellers, because now you got guys that are like, hey, I want a bigger and better farm, and they're coming back to you. But
right.
The service that you're providing them, to your point, like this, and your knowledge, because you're still continually doing your clients' farms as well, aren't you?
I am. Yeah. Yeah. So this is my, I think this is the question you're asking, but so whenever I sell a farm and I look at a farm, and what I figured out is there's too many for me to just be selfish and keep them all for myself. Like I'd love it, but I just can't do it. And what outweighs the profit that I make, that one that we just looked at was a rarity, I guess, but I do pretty well on most of the ones that I flip. And I've flipped, I probably flip 2 a year. But what far outweighs that profit is the network of people that I've met that have become really good friends and really good clients. And they're not even clients anymore, because it's not a business thing anymore. And it's hunting for me is more about going to hang out with these guys that I helped build their farms. That's more of what's exciting for me than actually sitting in a stand and shooting a deer. Like this is what it's turned into for me. That's my excitement. So back to your question, when I see a farm and I go with a client on this farm, before I even go, I'm looking at the map and trying to figure it out. And so I know before we park the car where we're going, like where we need to head to see if it's what I think it is. So when we strap up the boots and start walking through the woods or roaring across the pasture in the ATV, I know where we're going. So, and it's awesome to help them understand that okay, you're going to buy 200 acres. And this 200 acres, you're going to pay, $2,500 an acre for. But if we zoom the map out, you can see how it interconnects to a lot of timber. You can see that you can get it on the southeast corner. You can see by the soil map that we can get stuff to grow here, here, and here. So if we can go into this farm and make a food plot that makes this a turnkey hunting property, this farm that you just paid $2,500 an acre for, I could sell it for $3,500 an acre. On 200 acres, that's $200,000. So I tell people, before you even, without any of what I do, buy land, because it appreciates in value. But if you buy land and do what I'm telling you to do, it's a no-brainer. There isn't a risk. It's going to appreciate. That's how easy this is. It's like you take the risk away of the possibility of land appreciating in value, because it's going to appreciate. It's never failed. For all the years that I've been doing this, it's never failed. So it's such an easy sell. And so the guy from, we'll say he's a guy from Ohio looking at the property that's watched all the outdoor hunting shows, and he knows that Waddell and the Drurys and the Kiskies, all of them have episodes coming to Kansas. So he's hooked. I want to hunt in Kansas. But he only gets 2 weeks of vacation. So he doesn't want to come here and bust his tail to put in this food plot. So I do it, or you guys do it. And the minute, the food plot's done, the blind's in place, or the ladder stand is hung, we create the path of least resistance for the deer. We tell the guy where to park the car, where to walk, on what day, with what wind, and he's going to see deer, and he's going to hold the biggest rack of his life. He's super excited. But on top of that, he knows that if for some reason he had to sell this farm, he's going to sell it for $200,000 more than he paid. And I tell him, okay, for me to do this work for you, it's going to cost you $15,000, or we'll say $20,000 for me to do all this work for you. You're still going to net $180,000 when you sell this property.
Tondo, you said something, I don't even know if we were recording, and I think it was actually this specific farm that you got on your screen that we're looking at, the fish in a barrel. I'd never thought of it that way when you said, hey, I put in a couple acre food plot, and it increases the value of every acre on the place, not just those 2 acres, right? And
absolutely,
and that was an interesting way to think about it, and just a way I haven't thought about it, because looking at this map, I'm going, wow, look at the beautiful green food plot, and I can see the deer fence you created with the trees you took down, all the stuff we think about. But in reality, what you just did here with a well-placed food plot and blind, and again creating a trail system for getting the deer groomed to come in on the easiest path, you just literally made this guy $200,000, and he gets to enjoy it along the way. I mean, it's a whole different, I guess, mindset on how to think about it.
Totally. Yeah. That's what's it's made it really, so I tell a person, if I had a $100,000 lottery ticket and I know it's a winner, and I tell you, if you give me $10,000, I'll give that to you, wouldn't you give me $10,000? This is a winning lottery ticket. Like,
Tondo, just for future reference, I just stole that. I'll be using that exact analogy you just used.
Absolutely.
I want lots of lotto tickets.
No, like that's it makes it work for them, and all I can do is spend a couple days with them looking at properties and explaining it, and it's never failed. So that's why it comes back to what you said. Clients have become so loyal because they're selling these farms, and I'm doing 1031s with them because we're stepping up to a bigger farm, and they are getting that profit, and their wives are happy because they're bringing home big increases, you know. And I have ones that are saying, man, this is a great hunting property, you know, but if you find one with some rental income on it, that's also great hunting, and it's twice as much money, you know, let's go look at it. So that same client is doing what I've been doing, just stepping up. You know, when I started, I had a farm, and when I got my real estate license, I had that farm, and I started buying some neighboring property. So my initial farm that I bought that was, 540 acres is now 1,280 acres contiguous. But through flipping and I have 6 farms now. So we're pushing 3,600 acres, and everything's paid for. So the proof is in the pudding. Like, this is why I do what I do, and I love it. And, I'm 55, and my wife I'm saying, we could retire. And she's like, you'll never retire. Like, and why would I? Because honestly, let's go back. I used to break my back, with a chainsaw and dragging trees around. And now I feel like, and I'm not a Star Wars geek at all, but I feel like, Luke Skywalker sitting in that loader, it's like I got air conditioning and Bluetooth in, and I am Picasso in the woods, just putting this together. And then you back off and look at it and start getting the cell camera pictures. And that's it. People say, man, do what you love. I love this. This is the greatest thing I could ever do.
Now, what a neat story, Tondo. I mean, it's cool because it's a repeatable story, and you're living proof. Through your success, you've been able to personally put together an incredibly impressive farm, and like I said, it's paid for. So there's a lot of peace and mind in what you have sitting there as a nest egg for your family or your legacy, or however you want to look at it. But Trav, I know you've been pretty quiet and observant on this, but I mean, Trav, you come out of arguably the biggest hunting state in the country, in Wisconsin. I know you've spent an extensive amount of time hunting in Kansas. Give us your 2 cents on Tondo's strategy in Kansas versus, what you've done through your career in Wisconsin. Because, I mean, your guys' stories are pretty similar, and what you and your brother-in-law put together is a lot like this. I'm just wondering distinct differences on strategy in Wisconsin versus, Iowa, for that matter, or Kansas.
Well, I mean, access and size in Wisconsin is probably bigger than, in Kansas and Iowa. I mean, we come from the land of the 40s up here in Wisconsin. So, I mean, you always got, line sitters and stuff like that. So, like, Tondo was saying, we always look at access, but we look at keeping the deer more centralized in the center of the farm. And if we can do that, we take out a bunch of trees or whatever we need to do to keep them centralized. But the other thing we do is we got to work more with neighbors, and trying to pull the deer from the neighbors is always a key for everybody. But with these smaller parcels that touch lands in Wisconsin, working with your neighbors is just as important with keeping the value of your property, keeping the usefulness and the age structure there for the deer. And at the end of the day, it just gives you more history, more intel when you're dealing with your neighbors and getting the info from them. But, I'm like Tondo, it's, I get on a new farm before I even leave there. I have a lot of it already recreated in my head. And if time was standing still, I could do a lot more of these setups. But I mean, that's why you guys are around. And, you know, I mean, I'm mostly just doing it on our own farms now. I'm not doing a lot of client stuff anymore like I used to, just because of a time factor. But there is a few that I get on in the winter, you know, when we're kind of slower, and some of these farms up here that we need the winter time because of how wet it is and marshy to even access some areas. So that's when we do a lot of our logging and TSI work is in the winter times. So
fair enough. I appreciate that. Tondo, I see you got the picture of the pond before, and I know we're going to get to an after, but you want to take a couple minutes and just walk us through this specific project?
So this is a property that I sold, and the client said, no, I think I got it. I'm set up. I'm going to just put a feeder here. I don't know if you can see it, but follow it. So he said, I'm going to put a feeder in here, and then I'll just put a tree stand right here, and I'll be able to shoot the deer that are bedded in these cedar trees. And after a year of hunting it and you know, seeing the deer working their way through the cedars over here and never coming within range, and that goes back to the feeder thing. Like there were deer eating at the feeder, but nothing was coming within bow range of him sitting in his stand here. So he finally said, okay, what can you do? So I said, well, you know, I would expand it, get it. So, and this is just grass in there. I'm like, why don't you plant it? Why don't you put a crop in there? You know, make them use the whole area, and play the wind a little better. So let me find it. So this is the after. So I put a redneck blind in. I pulled a bunch of cedars. So I have a video of using an attachment Valex makes called a grubber, that literally there's nothing hydraulic on it. It's just a big piece of steel that you jam into the root of the cedar, and I can pull out a 30-foot cedar in about a minute, just with the loader. You just put the weight of it at the root ball and then just lift it, and then you can shake it in the air and get the dirt off of it. And then I take the cedars and then I strategically put them along the bank, so there's no way the deer are going to get behind you. And then I put them along here, and then I create these paths of least resistance for the deer to come in. So and you block it off, so the deer have to come in where you want them to come in. And then this will be the arc, the turnip arc that I put in. And I actually created a trail from where the guy lives to come onto the bank to get into the blind, and he never messes with any of the deer that are here on the northwest corner. So it's the whole thing is intentionally set up for the guy to be able to slip into a redneck blind that's along the bank of the pond and get so stay tuned. We'll see what kind of deer he shoots this year versus, watching the bigger deer in the distance, or, getting random pictures of big deer, but he never saw one come in bow range. So this, this is the joy of what I do. Just when they call you and it's like, don't steal this, but it's like, I thought my next business is going to be called Habitat 911.
I like that.
Yeah. And because it's like, I know you guys, you got the gift, and it's like how the artist looks at a piece of marble and he's like, oh, this is going to be some great sculpture. It's like, that's what we do when we look at a map. Like, you can't not do it. It's ingrained in us now. So, yeah.
I'm just sitting here laughing though, Tondo, because looking at this, I love, like you said, the Picasso and the woods thing. It is so true, because I mean, at the core of it all, this is fairly simple, but you do have to have, a vision in what you're going to take something from and what it's going to end up being, and then ultimately how well does it work. this is cool. I mean, I'm just enthralled. I could sit and stare at this thing and think about how it's going to work or how it's going to play or what wind direction you're going to use. So I think this is a great example. And it sounds like this is a pretty new project. If you're saying, is it this year's project?
Yeah. So I did this one, like, I don't know, 2 months ago, maybe.
Cool.
Yeah.
You'll have to send us some, well, you have the before, the after. Now we're going to need the success. So
yeah,
you'll have to make sure you keep us in the loop on how that works for them, because it's always amazing between, and Curt and Trav and Jason and I have talked about this in a couple different podcasts and just in general. It is amazing. It doesn't matter where you are. It doesn't matter if you're in Wisconsin. It doesn't matter if you're in Kansas. It doesn't matter if you're in Virginia or Ohio or Texas or whatever. There's some basic rules that it's amazing that successful people always follow. And they're not any secret. I mean, Curt always says, you got to have a lot of one and not of the other, and so and that's the pressure and, not a lot of pressure. And you have to have good access, playing your winds right. Even like you just set his place up so he can come in a little bit different, and maybe that's all it is just coming in on one side of the pond versus the other. All those things, but it doesn't matter where your investment's at. Those basic rules and being able to reach out and touch somebody like yourself or Travis or anybody on this podcast and just ask the question, hey, what do you think? Because you didn't move his stuff. How far is the blind from the ladder stand? 50, 100 yards? Probably 100 yards?
60 yards. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and that's the crazy part about bow hunting in particular. 20 yards makes a difference. So to be able to have, to reach out and say, hey, Tondo, you want to come just look at this, after you're all set up. I mean, I have guys come out and do that stuff. Like I'll have setups and stuff done and I'll call Curt and be like, come on, man, you got to come just look at this with me just in case I missed something. Because it's a 20-yard difference. 20 yards between, a trophy pitcher and a sad, frowny pitcher at the end of the day.
So what are you saying? Like, I mean, let's talk about 20 yards. I mean, there's very sound advice and send it. They don't die if the arrow don't fly. Send it.
I think what you said, Gerpsy, and back to what Tondo said in the beginning is, we sit in our stands and just recreate things and look to how to improve even after we set a farm up that we're hunting or a client's hunting, it's never done. I mean, you're moving stands, you're, finding out exactly what the deer are doing. I mean, trail cam inventory is great, but you don't see exactly where they're coming out every time, how they're acting, where, you can get a lot from it. But just being there and hunting it right, you can't be there as much as the old addict. Just go out there and hunt as much as possible and you'll, get lucky once in a while. You got to keep the pressure down also. So it's to really capture a property and really develop it to its full potential and know the history. I mean, you're, 5 years into a property, getting it set up, like Tondo was saying, you can take the right piece and set it up to, harvest good deer right away, but you're always going to be manipulating it throughout time.
Right. But so let me just add to that, again, what we do, what I do, what Expedition Land Management's doing is like, can you see my screen? Just the patch of cedars, the immense amount of timber back here, this patch of cedars, this farm right here. I look at this place, I would say it's worth $2,500 an acre. Even right now, with the way land prices are, maybe it's worth $3,000 an acre, right? But all you do is that. and now it's worth $4,000 an acre. That's it. Because now it's a turnkey hunting property. We put a blind in there, you put a feeder in there, and this right now is lush and green and growing. You know, we did some soil samples, we figured out what it needed, and now this is just a lush food plot. And I wish I had the pictures from it, but it's just getting hammered, and the drone doesn't show it, but we create that path of least resistance. You know, we tear into the woods with the equipment, and then you just stay off that trail. The deer, that's what they use. So we know the deer are going to walk in to come into this food plot right up this tunnel, the tunnel of love. They're the fatal funnel. They're coming right there, you know. So we just set it up. We used the trees that we took out to block any kind of access, so they can't get behind this blind in any way possible. And then the access into the blind is from the back, you know, and you're coming in from the southeast. You got the northwest wind where all these deer are bedded. You just stay out of there, and they'll use these trails to come into it. But now this is a turnkey hunting property. So multiply this amount of work times however many acres you're sitting on. This could be 500 acres, but now it's worth that, because that food plot changed the price of the whole property. It's like putting a pond on a property, like, and that's what I've actually started doing with a project I'm on right now that I'll eventually flip. We just put in a wetland area and expanded the pond, with the intent that I don't know how it is in the other states, but in Kansas, you know, a pond, let's just say in Kansas, they say anything over 3 acres is a lake. So having a lake on your property, the value of that lake increases the value of the property, because everybody wants a lake. Everybody wants to fish. So now it's not just a place you can deer hunt or camp or ride an ATV, but now you can fish it, you know, throughout the summer. So it just increases the amount of recreational value. So especially where I'm in Kansas City, everybody wants to be within an hour of Kansas City. They want to be able to pop up a tent, fish. And these are the clients that don't really even care about hunting. So I'm now catering to those clients that just want to have a place to take their family for the weekend. And those are the supplemental clients to the hunting clients. And something else I just thought of, when I make that path of least resistance. So it's funny, you guys can't see it, but I could drive my F-250 into these woods and not scratch it. That's how significant these trails are that I make going back into the woods, right? And they're cleared well enough that you can maintain them, you know, forevermore. And it's not going to be a whole lot of work to keep these trails cleared. But what we figured out, let's just say it's November 11th and you shoot your deer. When your deer gets drilled and he goes running off, guess where he's going? Down the path of least resistance. Like, so I've had clients tell me, like, it's never been so easy to blood trail their deer because the deers run down the trails that you make. So it's like that's like, if I'm escaping, that's where I'm going, you know? So I'm having clients saying, man, it's got more uses than you even told us, because now they're not like ducking under limbs and crawling on their knees. They're walking down that trail till they find the dead deer.
When all those things, like you're saying, what you're doing, we call it the Stand on Your Investment podcast for a reason. And that's because guys like yourself, like ourselves too, we're really just trying to get people to realize the investment they have. And by stand on it means work on it. You know, those things that you're doing, the things that we're doing, some of the tools that we have in our arsenal to try to just improve the value of the land wherever you're at, whether it doesn't matter where in the country you're at. And there's a lot of very good agents within United Country that can do a lot of the stuff, but not a lot of them are like Travis, too, where you're too busy to do it for your client anymore, and
right.
You're only not that busy just because you've chosen to do it like this. You've chosen to be like, hey, this is what I am going to do.
Absolutely. Yeah. And kudos to Travis. Like, Travis has a flock. I don't know the proper term. He's got a fleet. He's got a platoon of people working for him. And with me, I got 2 guys that are out doing real estate work. And they're handpicked because they think like I think. But outside of that, it's just me, but I'm doing well. I'm living good. And, it's just the path that I chose that, like, I've said this before to Travis, like, I want to be the guy driving the school bus, just like Travis. He's in charge. He's driving the bus, right? The only difference is his bus is full of people, and me, I'm driving the bus and I don't have anybody else on it. You know what I mean? It's
just
like
a shorter bus, Tondo.
Yeah, I drive the short bus, right? That's it. Yeah, like that's it. I don't like. I want to be in charge, and God blessed me with this because I'm in charge.
You're just driving a side by side is all you're driving. So
that's it. Yeah, I don't need. I just don't want the headache that Travis, I know he has. He's a humble guy, but man, I couldn't do it just dealing with all of the real estate stuff that happens with employees. So he's got a gift.
It takes a different breed to do that. I can guarantee you, in a different mindset, and you kind of, in a way, have to be. You can't be, overly selfish with your time because other people need your time also. And I mean, it took me a few years to get to that. And, I love helping agents get into a plan and construct it and negotiate it. And, the thrill of the deal is what I love to do. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
they just need more. That's why I got so many agents. I just need more deals going on, Tondo, because
right.
It's like a drug. So
it is. I know. You're spinning the plates. Yeah.
I mean, we're probably approaching the wrap up time and things like that. So I guess ending wise, I mean, any client anywhere that utilizes the XLM, which is part of anybody that's in UCHP can access us. But at the end of the day, any agent can call you, Tondo. And that's the great thing about a lot of the group that's has come together through that UCHP network. I mean, man, there's a lot of people that you can call and lean on that are pretty close to anywhere in the country for you to ask the question. Ask that second opinion about a certain farm, or what's your philosophy on this? I mean, that's the great part about this podcast too, is we get a chance to talk to these people all over the country and let everybody else hear it. Whether it's Travis on some of what he's doing in Wisconsin, whether it's what you're doing in Kansas, all those things are fun. And I think even if you just pick up one little thing, I think about some of the conversations you and I have had, Tondo, how you set up certain cedar trees for bedding. Like you cut one side of the cedar tree, pack the cedars in, and lo and behold, you'll have a deer bed there, So
yeah,
like some of those little things that everyone's got a ton of knowledge. And if you talk to them long enough, you're going to find one thing that you're like, man, I'm going to do that. I want to try that, So, I mean, hopefully in, let's see, season September, 13th or 15th is Kansas?
15. Yeah.
So hopefully the wind's right. You can send us a picture of the guy that shot a deer on your pond set there. That
Right.
would be a good one. That'd be a good one.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Tondo, we just obviously we want to thank you for your time today and you know, sharing all your insight and some of the storyline of what you do and how you've done it to become so successful. I think there's no doubt Tondo probably needs to become like a quarterly guest on the podcast so we can just pick your brain on what you got going at that minute. But with that said, I know, Tondo, we've eaten up about an hour of your day. In closing, is there anything else you'd want to mention to the group? I mean, the one that we're kind of priding ourselves on with UCHP members is that it truly is a group of people living a lifestyle, and not just saying that they're a land pro. They truly understand this game and the art, I guess, that we talked about today. I'll turn the baton back over to you. And like I said, in closing, if there's something else you want to mention, Tondo, we'd love to hear it.
No, I think that's important. You just touched on it. It's like people that are calling themselves land pros. It almost devalues what a land pro is, because people just throw that title on their card. And you know, it's turning out they're the guys that are pointing at the cow tracks, telling you that there's a lot of deer. It's like, that's kind of what it's becoming. And it's like the secret is out. That's what happened, you know, 5, 8, 10 years ago. People started seeing one more thing. So I went to this continuing education class, and I had had a real estate license for 2 years. And there's 60 people in this class. And at one point, the instructor said, raise your hand. And this is the biggest mistake I ever made in my life. So he said, raise your hand if you sold $1 million property. So I raised my hand along with like 5 other people in the 60 people. And he's like, raise your hand if you've done multiple deals for $1 million. And, you know, there were like 2 of us. And then they're like, really, how long have you been in the business? And this other guy said, you know, I've been in the business for 24 years and I've done 4 of these deals. And then they asked me, and I was like, 2 years, I've done 6. And everybody was like, what do you? And I'm like, I just sell land. And I should have never told the secret. You know, it's like, because now everybody thinks they're land sellers. Everybody is chasing after what, you know, we do, but they're not qualified. You know, they don't belong. It's like, I'm not in the MLS. You know, the MLS requires that anybody has access to go to these places, but sometimes you put 160 acres with a pond on, and the agent that goes to show it because it's on the MLS doesn't know the common, you know, courtesy of closing a gate. And now the client's got cattle out because they didn't close the gate, you know, when they went to look at the property. So I just don't use the MLS, because people that don't belong looking at land shouldn't be out there looking at land. A lady called and said, you're the listing agent? Yeah. What's the gate code? I'm like, I'm not giving you the gate code. And this is the same lady that, you know, 3 months prior was on a property that I had and got stuck in a washout on a pond dam, and called me like an hour and a half away to come pull her out. Like, I'm not coming to pull you out. Like, you shouldn't have been out there in a Toyota RAV4, whatever. So all that to say, you know, people shouldn't say they're land pros if they're not land pros. So kudos to this group for gathering up the people with the qualifications to go out and do it. And it's a disservice to the public, you know, for them to call and go look at a property with somebody that's not qualified. That it's, you know, some people may get lucky, but would you rather have me hand you a winning lottery ticket, or would you just rather walk in and buy one and hope to win?
you know.
Sure.
Like,
No, fair enough. I agree. And different strokes for different folks. I mean, that is the one reason we are diligently trying to hold the UCHP agents to a different standard with qualifications and backgrounds and everything else. So that said, Trav, Gerps, you got anything to add before we sign off this week?
Other than you know, when you're looking for land and you're looking to, you know, have a good investment in land and recreational and hunting properties, I mean, anybody can write a contract if they have a real estate license, but that is so minor in the whole deal, the contract. I mean, heck, you can have your attorney draft it. It's knowing the property, knowing what you can do with the property, the research that the, you know, the land agents, land pros inside our system do for the clients is the difference that sets us apart, you know, from a regular realtor. I mean, there's great land agents, you know, through, you know, multiple different companies. You know, it's hire a land agent, not just an agent.
Yeah, make sure you can speak the language. I'm in full support with both of you on that for sure. If not, stay in your lane and get us involved. How's that?
Yeah, that's right.
Gerps, anything on your end?
No, I'm good. This is one of my more fun ones because I got to go nerdy. Curt always gives me shit about going nerdy on deer. Tondo likes to do the same thing.
We're deer nerds. It's not our
I know.
fault,
I can't help
but
it. Can't help
it. Again, Tondo, just want to take a second and thank you for your time and knowledge today. Like I said, no doubt we'll have you back on because our normal format, when we dissect the farm, I'd love to have you in on that dialogue, regardless of where that farm's at. Just having you put your eyes on a map for the first time, I'd love to get some insight from that perspective. So all that to say, stand on your investment. Talk to you guys next time.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching this episode of the Stand on Your Investment podcast presented by UC Hunting Properties and Expedition Land Management.